Before I take the sediment, I will begin the recording of the meeting. I will now take the sediment for this meeting of the Planning Local Review Body held on 11th December 2023. The following members are present: Councillors Ali Callison, Jerry Convery, Colin Dewar, Gladys Ferguson-Miller. Councillor Elise Frame is not present. I have apologies from Councillor Mark Horsham and Councillor Leslie MacDonald. Councillor Maureen Devlin is attending as a substitute. And the following members are present: Councillors Richard Nelson, Norman Ray and Graham Scott. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. We will then go straight into the business of today. Item number 1, is there any declarations of interest? If there is no declarations of interest, I'll move to agenda item number 2. The minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 12. These are submitted as approval as a correct record. I will move these minutes as a correct record.
I'll second it.
All agreed? Thank you. We'll then move to agenda item number 3. That's the review of the case in respect of planning application P211542, which is pages 13 to 132 in your pack. The item before us today is a notice of review from Williams Gallagher on behalf of Greenstone Noble. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for alterations to the existing restaurant in formation of drive-through lane with associated works at 3 Leesburn Court in East Kilbride. The first point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has requested that a hearing session be held to allow the PLRB to examine the issues raised in the decision notice in relation to the impacts of the proposals on road safety and ask questions of parties involved in the preparation of their evidence on this matter. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. My view is that the information we have before us is insufficient to allow us to fully consider this case today. I suggest that the Roads and Transportation Services and the applicants be asked to provide more further written submissions on the impact of the proposed development on the local road network in terms of traffic safety. In addition, I think it is appropriate to ask Transport Scotland for written submissions on the impact of the proposal of the trunk road and in the network in the vicinity of this site. I'll ask if there's any comments from members. If we're all agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. There's no further comments. Given that the PLRB has determined that further procedure is required, we cannot consider this matter further today. Officers will now make the appropriate arrangements in terms of the Town and Country Planning, Scheme of Delegation and Local Review Procedure Scotland Regulations 2013. Thank you. We'll then move to agenda item number 4, which is a review of case in respect of planning application P230870, which is pages 133 to 194 in your pack. The item before us today is a notice of review from S2 Act on behalf of Mr Hugh McBean. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to review an application for planning permission for P230505. Sorry, I've got the wrong one.
Yeah. You're in number 5, isn't it?
Sorry.
4.
Apologies. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry. The applicant has asked the PLRB to refuse an application for planning permission for installation of 2 dormers at rear and conversion of integral garage to habitable accommodation at 9 Brassey Court in Bothwell. I will ask the planning advisor firstly to describe the background to this request for the members.
Thank you, Chair. So this application was refused under delegated powers by officers on the 23rd of August this year. The report of handling on pages 145 to 151 sets out their reasoning to refuse the application. The reasons for refusal in the decision notice can be summarised as follows. The proposal is contrary to Policy 16 of National Planning Framework 4 and Policies 5 and DM2 of Local Development Plan 2, as it results in a detrimental impact upon the character of the building, and the proposal will impact upon residential amenity as a result of an over-dominant structure. And secondly, the proposed extension does not conform to the scale, design or character of the original building on the site or the surrounding built form, and would therefore be detrimental to the amenity of the area in general. The appellant's notice of review provides their reasons for seeking the review, and these are summarised on pages 176 to 184 of the papers. In summary, these include, firstly, that the application site is not within a conservation area and it's not listed. There is no repetition of design within the streetscape that requires to be replicated to prevent the development looking out of place with the character of the area. The street has houses of many different modern designs and a range of materials. There is no need for the existing house to reflect its original design. The character of the modern street would be no different. Secondly, the neighbouring house is 2 stories in height, and most of the other houses on the street are 1.5 stories in height. The dormer will not be prominent as it's located to the rear of the house and is partly obscured by an earlier side extension to the house. Within the street, there are many examples of prominent dormers on dwelling houses. And finally, the applicant has met the recommended window-to-window distance of 18 metres. In an urban setting such as this, there is no expectation to privacy of all garden ground. But notwithstanding the above, the main area of usable garden ground is to the west of the adjoining property, number 7 Barassi Court, which is a greater distance than the 18 metres from the proposed dormers. So in coming to determine the review, the PLRB should take into account the following policies in the development plan. These include policy 16G of NPF4, which advises that house order development proposals will be supported where they, first of all, do not have a detrimental impact on the character or environmental quality of the home and the surrounding area in terms of size, design and materials. And secondly, they do not have a detrimental effect on neighbouring properties in terms of physical impact, overshadowing or overlooking. Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking in the South Lancashire Local Development Plan 2 states, in summary, that in order to ensure that development takes account of principles of sustainable development, all proposals are required to be well designed and integrated with the local area. Proposals should have no unacceptable significant adverse impacts on the local community and the environment. And finally, policy DM2 gives a bit more detail in terms of extensions to houses. It says that the proposal should comply with the following criteria. First of all, the siting, form, scale, design and materials should respect the character of the existing dwelling and the wider area. Secondly, that the proposal does not dominate or overwhelm the existing dwelling, neighbouring properties or the street scene in terms of size, scale or height. Thirdly, that it does not significantly adversely affect adjacent properties in terms of overlooking or loss of privacy, daylight or sunlight. Fourthly, it retains adequate car parking, usable garden ground and bin storage within the site. And finally, it does not have an adverse impact on traffic or public safety. So I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has advised that the review of the relevant information before members is sufficient and no further procedures are required. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think that all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider this review without either a site visit or a hearing or any further written submissions. Can I ask if there's any comments? Do members then agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Okay, we will then proceed to review and we'll open for any discussion or questions. There's no hands raised. Can I just summarise the points made? The application is for planning permission for the installation of 2 dormers and at a rear and conversion of an integral garage to a habitable accommodation at 9 Barassi Court in Bothwell. The adopted South Lancashire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within a general urban area. Proposals for extension to dwelling houses are expected to take account of policy 16 of NPF 4 and policies 5 of DM2 of our LDP 2. We have to consider in this case whether proposals would have an adverse impact on the character and amenity of the surrounding area due to the design of the dormers, and an impact on residential amenity due to the overlooking or adjoining private gardens. If we consider that there is no valid justification to support the proposals at this location, and it would not accord with Policy 16 of MPF 4, Policy 5 and DM2 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the proposals, we could grant the planning permission subject to conditions. Our options here are uphold or reverse or vary the planning decision. I will then invite now for any decisions and the reasons. It is my opinion that we reverse the decision of the planning officer. I do think this is a sustainable development. I don't think it has any adverse impact on the community. Therefore, I will grant planning permission subject to conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
Is there anyone otherwise minded? Therefore, I am going to read out the rather than adjourn the meeting, I will just read out the conditions.
Just advise it will be emailed to members.
These will also be emailed directly to yourself. So it's application P230870. It's the conditions and reason. Installation of 2 dormers at rear and conversion of integral garage to habitable accommodation at 9 Barassie Court in Bothwell. 1. The development to which the permission relates shall begin no later than the expiration of 3 years beginning with the date of grant of this decision notice. 2. That before any development commences on site or before any materials are ordered or brought to the site, details and samples of all materials to be used as external finishes in development shall be submitted to and approved by the Council as the planning authority. Everyone agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Nobody otherwise minded? The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you. We'll then move on to agenda item number 5, review of case in respect of planning application P230505, and that's pages 195 to 292 in your pack. The item before us today is a notice of review from S2 Architecture on behalf of Mr Hugh McBean. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for P230505 for erection of front, rear and side extensions, alterations to roof profile and associated alterations and landscaping at 1 Grange Gardens in Bothwell. I will ask the planning advisor to describe the background to this request for review to the members.
Thank you, Chair. So this application was refused under delegated powers on the 13th of July this year. The report of handling on pages 209 to 214 sets out the reasoning of the case officer to refuse the application. The reasons for refusal in the decision notice can be summarised as follows. Firstly, the proposal is contrary to Policy 16 of National Planning Framework 4, as it is of a size that will detrimentally impact the character of the surrounding area. Secondly, the proposal is contrary to Policy 3 of South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, as it is of a scale and overall visual appearance that would be detrimental to the character of the surrounding area. Thirdly, the proposal is contrary to Policy 5 of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, as it will have an unacceptable adverse impact on the streetscape in terms of scale and massing. And finally, the proposal is contrary to Policy DM2 of South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, as it will dominate and overwhelm the street scene in terms of size and scale and will not retain an acceptable amount of usable garden ground. The appellant's notice of review provides the reasons for seeking the review today, and these are summarised on pages 239 to 282 of the papers. And these are summarised as follows. Firstly, that the surrounding area does not have a uniform character and has undergone significant change in the last 10 years. Secondly, that the proposed development is not considered to be of a scale or massing that is unfamiliar to the area, nor does it dominate the streetscape. The proposed development respects the original bungalow proportions and follows a pattern of development that is familiar in the area, where the property extends down a storey to the rear, creating additional living accommodation without adversely affecting the visual amenity of the principal elevation of the property, which is onto Grange Gardens. Thirdly, the proposed development will incorporate more usable garden ground than currently exists by incorporating a usable sunken garden level to the rear of the property. And that will offer amenity value to a once unusable area of garden ground. Fourthly, a holistic approach is being taken to the development proposals for the site, with all aspects of the design and its visibility considered to ensure that aspects of privacy and overlooking are maintained or improved. The proposed design has been considered to draw from the existing bungalow in terms of its form. And finally, the pitched roof form prevalent within the local area has also been replicated above the front and rear extensions to create a proposal which is consistent and respectful of the local context. So in determining the review today, policies in the development plan that are relevant include policy 16G of MPF4 and policies 5 and policy DM2 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan. The criteria that's to be taken into account are the same as for the previous case, so I won't repeat those. I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how we proceed with this review. The applicant has advised that the review of the relevant information before members is sufficient and no further procedures are required. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think that all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider this review, without either a site visit or a hearing or further written submission. Everyone agreed?
Agreed.
No comments? Do the members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information?
Agreed.
Agreed. We will then proceed to the review and open for any discussions or questions. Can I just summarise the points made? If there's no comments or questions, the application is for planning permission for erection of front, rear and side extensions, alterations to roof profile and associated alterations and landscaping at 1 Grange Gardens in Bothwell. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within a general urban area. Proposals for extension to dwelling houses are expected to take account of Policy 16 of MPF 4 and Policies 5 and DM2 of LDB2. We have to consider in this case whether proposals would have an inverse impact on the character and amenity of the surrounding area due to the scale, massing and design of the proposals and the impact on residential amenity due to the reduction in usable garden ground. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposal at this location and it would not accord with Policy 16 of MPF 4 and Policy 5 and DM2 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the proposals, we could grant planning permission subject to the conditions. Our options again here are uphold, reverse or vary the planning decisions. I will then invite now for decisions or reasons. Are members minded to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission?
Agreed.
Agreed. I will then move, and Jerry has seconded. Is anyone else otherwise minded? Therefore, the decision of this PLRB to refuse planning permission, as we are satisfied that the proposed development would be contrary to Policy 16 of MPF 4 and Policy 5 and DM2 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Agenda item number 6. I have no items of urgent business, therefore I will ask the clerk to stop the recording of the meeting and wish everyone a good day. Thank you.